Hello everyone, this is Biru from CRCF McGill. Welcome to our second training tutorial on how to set up an online survey using LimeSurvey at McGill. In our last tutorial, we talked about how to set up general survey properties. In this second tutorial, we'll talk about how to set up simple numeric input questions. And of course, first of all, you need to log into LimeSurvey using your email address. So once you're in, just click List Surveys, which will bring you to all the available surveys. Because last time we started working on Intro to LimeSurvey for CRCF members. So today we'll continue to work on this survey. So I'm just going to click this survey right here. And last time we were working on survey properties, but as I mentioned before, today we'll be working on questions and groups. And so that's why we'll be working on primarily questions and groups right here on the left hand side. So we'll be using most of the menus here today. We have set up our survey format as group by group in our previous tutorial, and the reason for that is that all the questions in the same group will appear on the same page if we use this option. And also, grouping questions can help us to separate one section from the next in your survey. But the most important function of grouping questions together is that it can help you to add conditions to your questions, which we will talk about more in details in later tutorials. So in order to add questions to your surveys, you will need to add groups first. The groups are like the bones in your body. They will help you to make a structure in your survey. Once the skeleton is set, you just need to add questions to complete your survey. So now let's start by adding 2 groups to this survey. All you need to do is click Add Group here to add a new group. So I'm just going to click it right here, which will bring us to the interface for adding a new question group. Of course, we'll start by adding a title for this group. In most surveys, we start by asking people some very basic questions about themselves, which we call descriptives. So I'm going to call the first group descriptives. And right under the title, you see description where you can write a short description for your group. So I'm going to type something here so you will see later on where this description will appear in your survey. Okay, so that's that. You don't need to change anything else. We'll just leave the rest of the page blank because we finished working on this page by adding title and description to this group. We're just gonna click Save and Close, which will bring us back to the main frame. Now under Question Explorer, you will see that we have added a new group called Descriptives right here. So now let's try to add another group. All you need to do is click Add Group under Question Explorer in order to add a new group below descriptives. So again, we're gonna give a title for our second question group. I'm just gonna call it Categorical Questions. If you don't have a specific description for your group, you don't need to put anything here. So for this time, I'm going to leave it blank to show you the difference between having a description versus not having a description. So we're done here, so I'm going to click Save and Close. Now once again, under Question Explorer on the left hand side menu, you see now we have 2 groups, descriptives and categorical questions. These are the 2 groups that we just added. And if you click on the little drop down arrow on the left, you'll be able to see that it shows there are no questions in this group and there are no questions in this group either. The reason for that is basically we didn't add any new questions to either of these groups yet, which is normal. So now let's try to add a question to the group descriptives. So what I need to do is to click this little plus sign right next to the group's title, add a question to this group. So I'm going to click here. It will bring us to the section of adding a new question. And of course, the first thing you need to set up for a new question is to assign a code to this question. So a code in LimeSurvey is equivalent to variable names in SPSS. So while you are setting up any question in LimeSurvey, you will always need to keep in mind what kind of data exportation format you want at the end of the day. That means you need to think about whether you're going to export your data to SPSS, Data, or M+, or any other softwares that you will be using later on for data analysis. So the general rule of thumb is that it's preferably that your variable name, which means your code right here, should be less than 8 characters long. Avoid using any symbols or signs, so that it will be more easily exportable later on when you want to export your data into different softwares. Okay, so let's say we would like to ask participants about their age. So I'm going to assign a code as age here. So this is a question about age. And right under the code, we have questions. This is where you write down the actual question for participants to answer. So let's say the question is, what is your current age? So this is the question for this particular new question. The question here will later on appear as variable label in SPSS after exportation of the data. Okay, so let's scroll down further. You see this section of help. This help section is for you to enter additional description, explanations, or examples that you would like to provide to your participant to facilitate their understanding of this particular question. But age is pretty easy to answer, so usually we don't need to add any help here. However, in order to show you what help does in your survey, I'm just going to write some random stuff so you see later on in the survey where this help will appear. Okay, so then that's that. On the left hand side, because we would like to continue to work on some other options on the right hand side, so we're just gonna click save first. Okay, which brings us to here, because we're not done working on the basic question of age, so we're gonna click edit, which will bring us back here. Edit the questions. So now let's move on to general options here. Now we know what kind of question we wanted to ask our participants. Now we need to decide what kind of question type it will be. As I mentioned before, this tutorial is about numeric input questions, so we're going to choose numeric input questions. Numeric input as our question type. So this question type is basically asking participants to write down the exact number. Because age is pretty self-explanatory, so it will be very easy to answer. And you can set this question as mandatory. Usually it's the case for many descriptive questions because age, gender, ethnicity are the most frequently reported descriptive information about our participants in publications. So it's good to keep it as mandatory, but of course it's up to you how you want to set it up. Okay, so let's move on to advanced setting. So here, okay, so if I set integer only on, that means participants can only use their whole numbers in this question, which is very convenient for age to avoid many mistakes. So now I'm just gonna set this as integer only on here, and also I can set a minimum value and a maximum value as well. So for age, let's say if I only recruit participants who are older than 18, so I can set a minimum age value as 18 and leave maximum value as blank. However, if you are recruiting a very specific age group, you can also put a maximum value there too. If you are interested in participants between age 18 to age 35, you can put 35 here as your maximum value. However, in our case, let's just leave it blank. But of course, if you are working with young kids and you would like to see their developmental changes, and sometimes it's not so good to ask their age like we did here. Perhaps it's much better to ask them to put their birth dates, so then you can calculate later on in any of the softwares, SPSS data, to calculate their exact age, because developmental changes could be very sensitive in terms of months and days, and so it's better that you use their exact birthday. However, if age or developmental changes is not your primary goal in your research questions, so you can just ask their age the way we did it here to gauge a general sense of how old your participants are. Okay, so that's that for this particular section. We will leave everything else as default on this page. So we are basically done. So once we're done, we need to save and close. Okay, so we'll bring us back to our question summary right here. This is under this question group. Under question group descriptives, and the question is about age. And the beauty of LimeSurvey is you can preview this question and look at it from a participant point of view very easily. All you need to do is click here, preview question. You can just click this button right here, you see. Okay, so because we did not complete all of the questions in all of the groups, we were not able to preview questions. However, now I added a fake question called age test under categorical questions. Now we should be able to preview our current question as age. So we click age, which will give you the question summary, age. And now we click preview question to see what this question looks like in a survey. So voila, there we go. So this is how it looks like. And there are two conditions in this, two limitations in this age question. The first one is the answer must be at least 18, because we're interested in participants who are older than 18, and then it has to be an integer value, a whole number value must be entered in this field. So these are the two limitations that we assign to this question. And if you remember, we talked about there is a help section that we can put things in to add additional description and explanation to help your participants to answer this question. This is where it will appear. Yes, please just tell me your age. So it will appear blue right under your question. If you don't put anything there, it will be blank. Okay, so that's how this question looks like in your survey. Okay, so this is how you set up a simple numeric input question in LimeSurvey, and our next tutorial will be on categorical questions using list radio and list radio with comments. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.